right, last one. G and I just finished up the latest season of Clarkson's Farm.
I do love Clarkson's
And I know you
Farm.
like it too.
I mean, I like Jeremy Clarkson. Some people can't stand him. I've always liked him. He's a bit of a buffoon. He can be a bit too much sometimes, but I do like him. And therefore, for me, Clarkson's Farm was just a match made in heaven.
I love it. And I've always loved Top Gear. I've loved the Grand Tour, all of them. And I love that they cross into each other's projects and they swap over and, and I thought it was funny. He's like, everyone's welcome here except Keir Starmer and James May.
Yeah, at the pub.
But so we were watching it. And so if you guys haven't watched it, it's on Amazon. Highly recommend. It's a good watch. But
it's 4 seasons now. Just start at the beginning and just binge watch the whole lot.
Yeah. The reason I want to bring it up on the podcast is there's some themes there. And I actually really applaud Jeremy for doing this.
I think yes, I know where you're going, and it's outstanding. Yeah,
and I think what Jeremy's done is, yes, there's a TV show, but actually what he's doing is infiltrating all of our living rooms to show you what's happening to the farming community at large.
Yep.
And all of the bureaucracy and the red tape, all the council
the
stuff.
Wasteful green schemes.
Yep. Making it almost impossible. And so what's happened this particular season, it was a really wet winter. All the crops basically were muddy and barely anything grew, so they didn't get much yield. And so at the end of this whole farming, year, they go to, they do the harvest, they've got all the grain, and then they go to sell it and it gets weighed and all this sort of stuff. And some of it didn't even register. They couldn't even sell it.
It wasn't up. There was a quality issue with it. It didn't have some particular characteristic, and it just became stock feed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just, God, it was like, I was just sitting there going, far out. And then you watch them all in the pub. They're all having a drink and they're all sort of commiserating. And he made a comment. I can't remember the quote, but it was basically like, the only thing that gets farmers to get back up again next year is just the promise of another year.
Yeah.
Next year will be better.
I think almost this naive kind of hope.
And I was just like, oh my God. And you like, this is happening here. And so the key issue I thought was worth talking about was the abattoirs. So you might know more about this than I do, but essentially what's happening is in Britain, they're basically clamping down on small business run abattoirs.
Yeah.
So locally, so you got to think about it, right? And for some of you guys who care about the meat and the quality of meat that you eat, the closer the abattoir is to the farm, the less the stock is rattled and stressed, and the better your meat tastes, basically. Because at the end of the day, you're eating muscle, right? So if that muscle dies with tension, well, then all of those endorphins and all of the adrenaline and all that sort of stuff is actually in the muscle's tissue still. And it affects the quality of the meat. And so, traditionally the abattoir would be either down the road or, not too far away. So your livestock doesn't have far to travel. Now what they're doing is they're like, through all the bureaucracy, red tape and all this regulation, they're saying that no, you can't do that anymore. And what it's doing is like, it's becoming cost prohibitive for these small businesses to run. So they have nothing to do but close, or the big guys can swoop in and scoop them up.
Yeah.
And so now what you're doing is exactly what they've done with so many businesses here or industries here in Australia, is that you have these corporate cronies.
Yeah.
And it's all condensed into a couple of big companies, and then they can set the prices.
This to me is a continuation of the war on primary production. So they're using red and green tape, and particularly water restrictions in the Murray-Darling Basin. That's a topic I've been banging on about since 2011. They're using regulatory environments, hostile regulatory environments, to punish our food and fibre growers. But the abattoir thing is a way for them to particularly target the meat industry, which is, of course, the enemy of greenies, vegans, vegetarians, and also CO2 and methane and all that other nonsense that they carry on about. That's right. And so I have a little bit to do with some of the farmers up around my area. Not much, but I know a few of them, and we talk from time to time. And this abattoir issue is absolutely happening here in Australia. It is devastating. What's happening right now, so take, for example, right now, we've got a bunch of farmers in drought. Now, the drought looks like it might have just broken for most of northern Victoria and southern New South Wales, just literally in the last week. But they've been in a horrific drought. And even once the drought breaks, it doesn't mean there's instantly feed for your cattle. It takes time. So it's still a really bad situation. And there are farmers. I helped a farmer the other day via this friend of mine to sell off a bunch of their cows that were then turned into basically sort of low-grade meat. They weren't intended to be meat cows, but they're perfectly edible. There's nothing wrong with them. But you're not going to have a prime steak out of it. Great for mince, great for sausages, great for stews, great for all of that sort of stuff. And I put it out there on my social media pages, and a bunch of you guys on my social media pages jumped on board, and I bought 5 kilos. I bought 20 kilos myself. That'll show up. I'll have to find room in the freezer. But that'll keep us going for quite some time. And it helped that farmer out. And here's the reality. We are paying stupid amounts of money for meat on the supermarket shelves. And yet simultaneously, the farmers cannot find buyers for their cows. They have to kill them and literally just bury them or burn them. Why? How can that be happening at the same time? Well, because there's a bottleneck in the middle where the farmer has to sell it to an abattoir. They can't kill it themselves and cut it up themselves and then sell it. It has to go to someone who's licensed to do that. And that bottleneck means that not a lot of animals are able to be processed. So there's a massive oversupply issue with not enough animals being able to be processed. Every farmer's trying to sell off their herd. Now they can't get $1 for their cows. But on the flip side, because of the capacity constraints that these abattoirs have, because they're being hit with regulation after regulation that's making it harder and harder for them to do their jobs, the meat that they can supply is flying off the shelves.
Yeah.
And so supermarkets can charge top dollar for it.
Yeah.
And so simultaneously, we have farmers going bankrupt because their animals are worthless and consumers being gouged because we can't afford the price of meat on the shelves. And the problem is the regulation that's now being applied to the abattoirs. So what this farmer friend of mine did was make some sort of an arrangement so that there are laws around, there are ways that mobile abattoirs can operate and other sorts of arrangements. And I don't think this was a mobile abattoir. I think this was just him getting some cows in with an abattoir that he has a relationship with. That was willing to prioritise him and he was able to help out this other farmer and mean that he actually got some money for these cows.
Yeah.
But that's just one farmer. I mean, there are so many suffering all over the place. And they're being strangled on purpose, in my opinion, by ideologues that have got a hold of government power and have got themselves into bureaucratic positions where they can strangle these people slowly for their own ideological reasons, taking away their irrigation water, red tape and green tape and costs, regulating them out of existence. In Clarkson's farm, so I adore what Clarkson's done with this. He highlights so many issues from town planning and local council issues, but one of the things he highlighted a lot more in season 4 was that they get offered money. And it doesn't happen as much here, I don't believe, but in the UK, they get offered stupid amounts of money to grow non-food crops.
Yeah.
So they're literally being paid a guaranteed amount of money. Nothing's guaranteed in farming. You plant a crop, you're banking on the weather. No, they get the money regardless. They get guaranteed money, and it's a lot per acre if they plant a bunch of wildflowers and other kind of mixed stuff that can't be eaten, and it can't really be used as very good feed either. It is of no use for human purposes.
Yeah.
But the government will take taxpayer money off humans and hand it over to the farmer as the only kind of guaranteed income a farmer could ever hope to get.
Yeah.
It's so perverse. But I want to come back to what he's done with Clarkson's farm, because what he's done is he's made a wonderful piece of entertainment that helps people that helps to change how people see the world. And it's brilliant. The only other person that I think did that as well as what Clarkson's doing, and in fact, Clarkson's doing it better, but if you adjust for the time, for the era, I think it's pretty similar, was the Dirty Jobs, Mike Rowe and Dirty Jobs.
Yeah.
Now, he went into that with the agenda of normalising, and in fact, more than normalising, of elevating dirty jobs, people who work hard for a living, trades, services, porta potty cleaners and ice, whatever, just the guys that are doing the hard work to earn their money. He deliberately, intentionally went into that show to lionize those people, to lift them up, to glorify that. And he successfully did that. And he has had a huge impact on American culture and the shift away from this idea that, if you don't go to university, you're a failure and you'll never be financially successful and all those sorts of presumptions. He helped to break a lot of that, a lot of those lies. And Clarkson is having, I think, a similar effect with Clarkson's farm. In this case, he's shifting people's attitudes or raising people's awareness of just how much we're being strangled by government.
Yeah, I think so too. And it's done in such a way that you don't feel like this is, there's an agenda here.
It's so well done.
You can see it clear as day, but it's not perverse. He's not trying to convince you.
And it's genuinely entertaining.
Oh, it's actually just funny when he narrates. Yeah. And I love that, he's driving his tractor around. He's got a Lamborghini tractor, of course.
Super,
and,
super excited,
And then Hammond comes in and, he's called his, little runt pig, Richard Ham.
And also, it's reality TV in the sense that the outcomes aren't known.
No.
We are actually watching.
But it's showing the realities of farming, because it was at season 3, he had all the problems with the pigs. And remember the pig igloos was an invention. Wasn't that his invention?
No, not the igloos, but the bar that went around them that did help to reduce the mortality rate.
Yeah, I didn't know that was, when would I ever learn that,
And Clarkson makes the point repeatedly, to be honest, and credit to him for doing this. He makes the point from time to time through all the seasons, he doesn't depend on farming for his living.
No.
But most farmers do.
Yes.
And the reality now is you talk to any farmer that isn't on a massive commercial scale farm, they need off-farm income.
Yeah.
You know, the wife's gone back to work at the local school, or
Yeah.
he's heading out to drive trucks and do deliveries, or like they actually can't survive off farming. And these can be farms with 1,000, 2,000 acres.
Yeah.
These aren't tiny little hobby operations.
I know we talked about this, and I promised I'd end on a good note. But I mean, we've talked about Zimbabwe or Rhodesia. We've talked about what happened with the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, is this just mass ignorance? Is it nefarious? Like, the people cheering this on, you know, your vegans, your green activists, you know, your climate crusaders. Is it purely because they're so corrupted by ideology they can't actually see what happens down the road, or do they just not care? Is it a callousness? I don't know.
I don't think they think that those outcomes will happen because they're so disconnected.
Yeah.
So we are the first generation, or now I guess it's the second generation, to not routinely travel to the country for holidays.
Yeah.
Everyone had a relative that had a farm, and going to the farm during the holidays and spending 2 weeks out there was sort of part of the routine.
Yeah.
A part of a way of life in Australia. And now we have entire generations that are purely urban. And this was something, if you go back to the Nicky Cruz days in Los Angeles when they had that round of gang wars, he would talk about, you know, he came from, I think, Puerto Rico to the US, didn't speak English, was thrust into this gang environment, joined the gangs, did well in the gangs, ended up killing people and so forth. And then he became a Christian, and he transformed his life. And now he tries to help people get out of the gangs, and he's written books about it and all that sort of stuff. He tells this incredible story. And he told me, I read his books, and he talks about how your entire world is this couple of city blocks, this concrete jungle. You have no connection outside of that. And therefore, the littlest, slightest thing within that becomes so important. Oh, that person from that gang set foot over that line in the pavement. That's the line between our territories. And now we have to go on, all that becomes a massive deal. And they're completely disconnected from the real world.
Yeah.
And I thought, I just can't imagine anyone in Australia living like that. And then a few years ago, I met a guy up in Sydney, and we met in person at an event, and we got talking about his life. I was driving him back to his place. He's never left about a 5-suburb area of Sydney in his entire life.
Wow.
He was born in a hospital within that area, and he's never been outside of it. Now, his family's ethnic. His family comes from overseas. But he's been within about a 5-suburb area. When I was in the US many, many years ago working on a short film over there, I met a guy in a place called Centerville in Tennessee, and it's the middle of Tennessee. And he was there working in a tent full of firecrackers because Independence Day was coming up. And so they do these big pop-up tents. And I got chatting with him, and he was, you're from Australia, blah, blah, blah. We talked. He was proud of the fact that he'd never left Centerville. And I asked him, and I re-asked him. I'm like, so you mean you haven't traveled to Nashville? You know, you haven't traveled to Chattanooga. You haven't, no. I haven't left my zip code.
That's insane to me.
It is. It's insane to me as well.
Yeah.
But this is what we're dealing with vegan activists and these people that are systematically tearing down the food production. They think it comes from the supermarket. They are detached. They are disconnected from the reality of all of the work that has to go on in order for that to show up fresh and edible.
And how many people rely on that?
Yeah, well, they rely on that. They just don't. They don't.
Well, we
recognize
see this a lot though. Like, you'd be aware of the rivalry between the south and the north of Melbourne.
Yeah,
the whole joke about don't cross the river.
Yeah.
Right. And I look, to be fair, I do say that. Yeah. But you know what's funny is you do kind of become not institutionalized, but you be kind of
insular.
Yeah, you do. You become a creature of habit. So we call it the Bayside bubble, right? Which starts from about, I don't know if you'd call Port Melbourne Bayside, but like anyone that lives like that side of the Nepean Highway. And the reason it's called the bubble is because it's so hard to get anywhere. You have to get out of the bubble and then get onto the main arterials to go anywhere.
Yeah.
And I lived in Hampton for like almost 10 years on and off. And in that time, you just get so used to just going, I'll just go across there, I'll go over there. The idea of going to Chadstone was like, ugh.
It's so far.
And so you just go to Southland, whatever. Yeah. Anyway, now we're out of Bayside. We are right near an on-ramp to Eastlink.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow,
Yeah.
I can get anywhere really quick.
Yeah.
It's amazing. All of a sudden I'm like, oh, north side, just jump on there, you get on the Monash and then go over here.
Easy.
I haven't had access to the freeways for a long time.
Yeah.
And you sort of go, oh yeah. So like I've been making trips over to Carlton, much to G's dismay. He hates it.
All the way to Carlton. Gosh, what a traveller you are.
Yeah, look at me. No, but you know what I mean? You sort of go, oh yeah. But then you go over that side. So I've been spending a little bit of time in the north, mostly just because there's some food places I wanted to go to.
Yeah.
And it's so funny. It's a different world.
Yeah.
And this is why we're at odds with each other, because like as soon as you cross the river, You know, you go Richmond, Collingwood, Carlton, then Brunswick, God knows Fitzroy,
Yeah.
like that whole area.
I lived in Fitzroy for 4 years. It was awesome. I loved it.
Like Brunswick Street used to be cool. It's not anymore.
That's
Anyway,
because I left.
you go there and you're like, wow.
Yeah.
They wear different things.
Oh,
They
yeah.
look different. The shops are different. There's rubbish, graffiti
To be fair,
everywhere.
Fitzroy, Brunswick, etc., is very different to the rest of the north as well.
Yeah. Oh, Brunswick's Fitzroy's always been bohemian.
I grew up in Preston, which is only another 5-6 k's
Yeah.
further north from there, and we didn't look at people in Fitzroy as normal people at all.
Yeah. It's a bit like St Kilda. St Kilda's
Yeah.
always been
Yeah,
bohemian.
it's always-
Yeah. But, you know, I just
Bunch
find
of
it so
pretentious pricks.
funny. But it's like, you know, they all ride bikes and they all stay there. And so they're so engrossed in their little community that the idea that there's people outside of it is like almost foreign to them.
Yeah.
So
but yeah, that insular kind of mentality exists for you know, political ideologies as well. And these vegan activists, these people that are trying to take down, you know, commercial agriculture is the devil. Okay, well, let's get rid of all machinery involved in agriculture, and now we'll just have to go back to where 93% of the population is directly involved in growing food. Otherwise, we starve.
yes.
Like that's all. No big deal.
Yeah.
No big deal.
And you might actually have to go do some work
Yeah.
yourself.
And those hemp pants will become non-optional because that's the highest quality fiber you're going to be able to get at the wages that you'll have because you're spending all day hand harvesting wheat.
Well, you've just watched another short clip from the Oddcast, and if you'd like to see the full video, it is over at our dedicated channel. That is the Oddcast HQ on YouTube. We will see you there. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and have a chat in the comments.